That's the vibe, is that you write these beautiful, sad, destroying songs. And you're very pleasant. Very-
I'm really happy. I think it's because I get all that shit out. Like I work it out.
Sarah, how are you doing? Welcome to the show.
I thank you. I'm so happy to be here on your show. I'm happy to be in Tofino. Taking a wonderful break from touring. I'm sort of in the middle of the two legs. I just finished sort of the American leg, and we're going to be doing across Canada in November. So I'm really excited about that.
Been a while since you've been on the road, right?
Well, it's been a solid almost 10 years since I've
Yeah.
done a full tour. I've done a lot of little tours, mostly solo stuff, where I'll do 3 or 4 shows or a week of shows or just individual ones. So, yeah, it's been a long time since the big production. And I had a lot of trepidation going into it, but I had such an amazing time, which is wonderful because now it allows me to sort of think ahead and go, oh, I plan to do lots more of this.
What was the trepidation? Oh, do I have the voice? Is the trepidation the stamina? What was the trepidation?
All of the above.
If you want me to, I can come around as your anxiety if you want me to, Sarah. I can do that for you.
I know it's on my shoulder, believe me. But yeah, no, I think it was more the stamina of can I do this? Am I going to enjoy it? Because I love my home. I love my nice bed and my pillows. I love my dogs and my kids. And I was kind of leaving all of that behind to go do this, and nature as well, which has become incredibly important for me as I grow older, and also just solitude. COVID taught me, unbeknownst to me, that I'm an introvert, and I really embraced that part of myself. And getting back out there in the big world was certainly, I was a little concerned about it. But as I said, I did it, and I was challenged with my voice the entire time. I blew up my voice the first 3 days of rehearsals, and then
Like you couldn't sing?
I could sing, but I had just trashed my voice. So I had lost a bunch of my high range. And so I had I put myself on steroids, which is never fun. But I did that for the first week and then went off and then started losing my voice again. So I went back on it again and ended up being on steroids the entire tour, which is not optimum, but it's fine. I got through it and weaned myself off. And, I haven't grown a second head yet. So it's so far so good.
What's the most surprising thing about being back on the road that maybe you hadn't considered?
I forgot how joyful it is. I have a lot of really great memories of it, but I forgot how much it filled me up or had the capacity to fill me up. And just to feel that connection again with a large group of people, that idea and that feeling of being part of something that's much bigger than just you and what you've created. I make music. I love making music. It's a very selfish act, but to be able to go out and play live and connect with all these people who have very strong feelings about that same music that I have strong feelings about, but they all have their own stories around it. But that energy, when it's shared, is absolutely magical.
I understand. Like you are aware that your songs are what brought people together in the first place, but the community and the vibe and the energy and the atmosphere that is created is also sort of extra you. It also sort of doesn't. It also sort of is outside of you.
It's me, but it maybe starts with me, but then it goes out exponentially into this beautiful space that we all share in those 2+ hours that we're together. And it is like this really beautiful levitated feeling of we all come from different places, from different walks of life, maybe different religious, political, social backgrounds, whatever, but all that stuff can kind of take a back seat to, and this is where I think music is really beautiful because it connects to a more sort of visceral, emotional, human part of all of us that is very uniquely similar and can kind of connect us in a way that I think we all desperately need these days because we are in such a divided place. So just to have those moments where we can all come together as a collective body of people and just remember our common humanity is, I think, so powerful and beautiful.
You've been inducted into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame. You've received a Governor General's Performing Arts Award for Lifetime Achievement. And in September, you'll be inducted into the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame. Does an award like this, which is a recognition not of like industry success or sales or anything like that, but of songwriting, of craft, does that mean something different to you?
It's a wonderful recognition. Honestly, I don't think about those things very much, but I do want to go back and talk a little bit more about what you asked me before about what was the most important thing that, or the thing that you were surprised about
Sure.
touring. And it fits into accolades like this, is that I have, and I think this is a very common theme, I have this sort of imposter syndrome. I've had it my entire life of, you don't actually deserve this. This really has nothing to do with you. At some point, the hook's going to come and pull you off and go, ha ha, just kidding. You don't deserve any of this. And I think the tour really felt like, for the first time, and I think I felt this when I got the at the Junos as well, the last time I got an award, where it's like, okay, I finally feel like I deserve this. I finally feel like I'm deserving of the recognition. I have this body of work under my belt. I have these successes, and I got to own that feeling of validation of, I get to be here and I belong here. And I think the tour really reinstilled that feeling that, you deserve this. You deserve this success. And I think the Songwriters Hall of Fame, I'm so proudly Canadian too.
Yeah.
So when I receive an award like this in my home country, that elevates it a little bit too, because I want to be recognized in the place that I've chosen to. Luck of geography. I'm so happy that I was born in Canada. I had both my daughters out on the road with me, and they were little when we toured the first time, and they never watched a show. They were always on the bus watching movies, and they never got to see mom be, the rock star. And both of them came out as young adults and watched all the shows. When they first came out, they said, I'm not going to watch. I don't really care. And they came out and they're watching me, play to 15,000 people. And they're like, wait a minute, my biggest heroes play to 15,000 people. And it kind of put me in a whole different light in their eyes too, which is like, oh my God, Mom, you're actually kind of cool.
Hold on, don't they know you're Sarah McLachlan? Like, don't you go to the mall and people are stopping you and yelling "Adia" at you and stuff like that?
They've seen it and felt a little bit of that, but they haven't felt it themselves. They haven't felt the peripheral excitement of like, oh, and Taja, my little one who's 17 now, she's like, you need to release a live album, Fumbling, because you sound so much better than you did on the record. I mean, they do like to keep you humble. It's like, it sounded like garbage. You sounded like garbage on Fumbling, but now you sound really good.
I'm glad they're there to keep you honest, Sarah. That's great. That's great. Yeah. Hold on, when you were musical from a very early age, like musical young?
Yeah. My earliest memories are of singing, and my mom had a lot of American folk music, Joan Baez, Cat Stevens, Simon and Garfunkel, and I loved listening to those records. And I sang along, and I begged my mom when I was 4. I said, I want to learn how to play guitar. I want to be like Joan Baez, and I was tiny and wee. So there was a lady up the street teaching ukulele, which was it was also much cheaper instrument. So we are on a very tight budget. So we got a ukulele and I started taking lessons up the street with Mrs. Pulsiver in our little neighborhood. And I fell in love with it. I lived and breathed music from my earliest age. And I always loved singing. I was singing constantly.
What was the first real song you wrote? Not like, oh, I Love Mom or like, Cats Have Whiskers. What was the first real song you wrote?
The first real song I wrote was Out of the Shadows on my first record.
Really?
Start to finish. Yeah. I mean, I got the golden ticket when I was 19. Network Records gave me a record contract and then allowed me the opportunity to figure out who I was as an artist. And, I had been in this band called the October Game in Halifax, and I had helped write melodies, but I'd never sat down and crafted an entire song by myself, music, lyrics, melody, all that stuff. So, I had to figure all that out. And so that was sort of the first song. I was playing 12-string guitar a lot of that time and kind of just relying on imagery. And that was, it was Jerzy Kosinski's The Painted Bird. I had just read that. And there's a little boy in that who's trying to find his way. I can't remember what it's about now. God, it was what?
Don't worry about
years
it.
ago.
Yeah, I'm not here to fact check. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
it's all good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Anyway, I just kind of told a story about this boy's journey in that song. And it was that was the first song, and just went from there.
Well, it's not a great descriptor, but I'll use it anyway. What I find surprising about that is that even in these first couple, and we're going to talk about Fumbling Towards Ecstasy in just a second, but even those early records, mm-hmm. they're very poetic lyrics. They're not straight narrative. They're not I feel so sad. There's nothing. Some of my favorite songs are I feel so sad. Some of my favorite song is Sometimes in Our Lives We All Have Pain, We All Have Sorrow. But they're deeply poetic for a new songwriter, Sarah.
I know I felt like I didn't have anything to say. And I didn't have stories necessarily that I wanted to tell. So I relied heavily on imagery and creating parallel universes of just trying to put beautiful words together. And, I listened to a lot to Kate Bush, to Cocteau Twins, to Peter Gabriel, and kind of tried to dissect, well, what is it that makes a good lyric? What is it that moves me? And Peter Gabriel in particular is very poetic. And he's telling a story, but he's often telling a story with just a lot of imagery. And I loved that. And again, because I didn't feel like I didn't have stories to tell. I don't really feel like
you felt like you didn't have a story? Like you feel like you didn't have like, hey, this happened to me, like nothing had really happened to you?
Yeah, I didn't feel like I had enough experience to be that kind of storytelling songwriter. But then as I continued along, the narrative of my life started to, weave its way in, especially when heartbreak happened, or when I started to look outside of my own myopic, self-involved world and look at the larger world and what was happening to people around me. And, because I didn't know how to tell the story of me, honestly, and so I think as I said, I relied heavily on looking around me outside of myself and just trying to create stories visually.
Do you ever have a moment where you're singing one of your old songs, or you hear one of your old songs, and this maybe goes back to the imposter syndrome, which sounds like it may have abated, where you're able to, somewhat, of course, a healthy version, a healthy dose of it now, maybe.
Yeah.
It keeps you from driving a gold car. Do you ever listen to one of them or sing one of them, and you have some ability to go, yeah, that's a hit right there. That's a hit.
No.
Okay. Thank you for coming on.
I think I have an idea when a song is at a good place where I feel like I've done as much as I can with it and it's strong and I let it go. But, here's a good example. Like I remember my manager at the time, Terry, saying, "Oh, Angel's going to be a hit." I'm like, what are you talking about? It's slow. And I was thinking about commercial radio and pop radio. And I'm like, no, it's slow and depressing. It is. No one's going to play this on the radio. And he obviously had some foresight. And I thought it was a strong song, but I didn't think it was going to be, I guess I was sort of thinking along the terms of commercial radio as the means to have a hit, which is why I was always surprised when any of them were hits, because I didn't think they sounded like anything that was on commercial radio. They weren't simple enough, but I guess I was wrong, which is really good. But I think there was only one time in my career when I set about to write a single, which was Into the Fire. And that was because the American record label listened to all the songs that we had. And they're like, you need something for pop radio. This is the only way we know how to sell you. So please write something for pop radio. So I fumed and fussed and then decided to, Pierre Marchand, my producer, we decided to sort of let's go down that road and try and write a hit. And we did that. And I guess it was probably marginally successful. And I don't like the song
You
because
don't
it
like
feels
it?
disingenuous
You
to
don't
me.
like
It
Into the
feels like
Fire?
I don't. I mean,
Oh.
I can listen to it now and go, oh yeah,
Uh,
I can listen to it and say, okay, there's some good qualities to it, but I hear the contrived nature of it, and have a hard time getting over that.
well, now everything's starting to line up for me. Now, I want to talk about Fumbling Towards Ecstasy now. Now, even just that story you're telling me about someone asking you to write a hit and you sort of writing it, I don't want to say under duress, but under extra musical or extra expressive reasons
Mm-hmm.
and not being as happy with it makes sense because for people who don't know, so 30 years after its release, you went to a cabin in the woods in the Laurentians in the early 90s, just outside of Montreal for, I think, 7 months to write this
Mm-hmm.
album,
Yeah.
right? What was going on in your life, in your career at the time? Where was Sarah then?
Well, I had done a fair amount of touring for Solus, and I was free of. I didn't have a boyfriend for the first time in my adult life. I had no animals. I was able to just sequester myself away in the woods and do nothing but write and think about music all day long. And that was exhilarating and so much fun because we didn't have like a deadline. I mean, this is a luxurious experience that I don't think a lot of young songwriters know. I mean, maybe we do now because we can make records on our laptops, and so we have the luxury of time. But we had this beautiful studio, no real deadline, so we had the time to experiment and try all sorts of different paths with the songs. And to me, that really embedded and instilled this idea of you know songwriting as an expedition. It's all about discovery. It's about trying different things, walking down different paths, and go, let's try this version of it. And oftentimes we come back to the very first thing we tried, but it was so much fun, and I just felt there was such a freedom of discovery in writing that way and in recording that way. And we've come back to that again, and it's this, I'm working on a new record, and it's just wonderful to be with a bunch of young musicians who are all so talented. And just you say, hey, let's try this. And honestly, I've had to say there's not been a single time where I have to say, oh, I don't really like that, can we try this? I'm just kind of sitting back and going, oh, this is so much fun. Everybody's so talented and amazing, and I love everything people are doing. So
You said that it was the easiest record you ever made. What does easiest mean there? Does it mean that? Does it mean speed? Does it mean clarity?
I think it means speed to a certain degree because it came together quite quickly. And I think that is because there were no distractions. And because I was in a great headspace, I was happy. And certainly there were things that I could write about that, the well was deep as far as, the things that were, past traumas or whatever. But I think just being kind of lighthearted and free allowed me that objectivity and a 30,000 foot view where I'm like, I can go back and look at all these things now and just feel and come at it from a different space. And so I think that was where it just felt really free to have all that time and energy to discover.
Well, speaking of the well being deep, I know that a few years before you made that record, you went to Thailand and you went to Cambodia with World Vision, and you've talked a lot about how that was pretty formative for you. Since we're talking about your songwriting today, I can only imagine how much that changed the way you saw the world and the way you saw the world and the people in it, art wise, creativity wise, songwriting wise. How does that change you? That trip?
Well, I think it just informed the way I see the world in a really new light. Like, it gave me this intense gratitude for everything I had taken for granted in my life. And so that change in perspective of, I'm so lucky, and I'm also so small and inconsequential. And um, I just think that applying that lens to kind of everything I did from there on in, and also allowing me a larger worldview of what suffering actually looks like. And I'm pretty empathetic, and it just, it broke my heart. And it sat there and was like, okay, I need to find a way through this. And so I think my finding a way through and just being more open um, and empathetic, I think, to the fact that you have no idea what's going on in other people's worlds until you take the time to listen and to sit with them and hear their stories. We spent a lot of time doing that when I was there. And yeah, I think that definitely woke me up.
Were you writing songs while you were there? Or did you come back with these feelings? Like
I
Ice,
came
for
back with
example?
those feelings. There was no time to write when I was there. I'm not very good at, you know, oh, I've just had this experience, sit down in the moment and write about it. I need a lot of time to process. And so coming back and spending again all that time by myself in the woods to process what had happened and to process how I felt about it and how I wanted to show up and how it informed how I wanted to show up in the world moving forward. Um, and just as I said, gave me a different world perspective.
I'm beginning to understand it a little bit better now. That the quiet and solitude, without trying, can help process things that we've experienced, or without saying, okay, now it's time to process things. It just kind of does it for you anyway when you're able to take some time and be by yourself.
Yeah, and for me, that solitude is imperative. And I find I need that more and more and more. Back to being introverted, and nature has been just incredible for me too. Like I have dogs, and I drop my kid off at school, and I go into the woods, and I hike for about an hour and a half every morning, and that's where I process and I write and I think about the song ideas, the lyrical ideas that I have, and or whatever else is happening. If there's a personal thing going on, that's where I go. It's like my walking meditation, and it's it's a huge part of my life.
Um, I want to talk about some of the processing you did on this record. It's going to sound like I'm going to ask you a very personal question, but I promise I'm not. I'll say that.
Yeah, you can.
All right. Because I saw you play Possession on Jimmy Kimmel. I thought it was beautiful. It was nice to hear you do it again. For people who don't know, it's about the experience of being pursued and stalked by various fans when you were a young musician. When that thing happens, or that kind of thing happens earlier in your career, is one of the things you're processing, does it change is it your relationship to fame, your relationship to your fans?
Absolutely. It certainly changed my relationship to fame. I mean, it it, it reinstilled what I already knew about it, which is that the things that I was creating go out there and take on a whole new life. And the Sarah I know is just me, but the Sarah that other people know, they put me on a pedestal. Not everybody, but some fans will put you on a pedestal and have expectations of you that are beyond the norm. And I mean, I understood from a very early age, I guess, the weird part of fame. Because when I was 11 years old, my picture was in the paper. Uh, friends of ours, we were skating and had all our names put in the paper. And I had a guy look me up, find me, and phone me, and say dirty things to me on the phone.
11 years old.
At 11 years old, yeah. And I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my parents because I didn't know was so shocked by it and didn't know what to do. So I just kind of left it alone. But so becoming famous, and it meant sort of that you become public property, and people have all these expectations of you, and it's a very separate thing, and it actually has nothing to do with you. And I don't know why I knew that early on. There's a responsibility to it, but there's also, I think this idea that I had to develop healthy boundaries for myself of, I know that this thing that I create, people love it. People take it and they do all sorts of different things with it. It means all sorts of different things, but that actually has nothing to do with me, Sarah, the person. So I have a very clean line of separating. So when there were the stalker issues, I mean, it was surprising. But it was just more scary because I didn't understand it. I didn't understand the depth of it.
Yeah.
And I guess writing Possession for me was a little bit of trying to put myself into their shoes to understand how someone could become so involved and so delusional about someone because they cared about them so much that they would possibly, you know, step over the line, do violent things. And it's interesting because the more I talk to other people, particularly women, in any position of power in the media or, you know, newscasters, VJs, you know, if your name was known, you would have stalkers, it seemed. Like every woman I talked to said, oh, yeah, I've dealt with this before, too. So it's not unusual for people to attach to someone who has some sort of celebrity. But
When you sing it now, does it feel like you're singing karaoke, or do you feel like you're reliving those emotions? Or
I never feel like I'm reliving the emotions, which is what's so wonderful. I think part of songwriting for me is processing whatever it is I'm going through, finding a place to put it, wrapping it up in a pretty box and putting it up on a shelf and saying,
so
here
no,
you go.
so no. Hey, I wrote the song about grief. I feel the grief again. No, I felt this. That is.
I do not feel the grief. I feel joy. I feel joy and release. And I think that's why I keep coming back to playing live is so amazing for me because I don't revisit those feelings. I feel the release of all that every time I sing it. And Possession is, you know, it's, I think because there was such a heavy energy attached to it and there was such a release in writing it that I love singing that song. But there's no attachment to the heavy feelings. It's just an attachment of freedom or feeling of freedom.
I heard Ice Cream wasn't supposed to get on the record.
It not so much wasn't supposed to. I was concerned because I was still at that place where I'm like, I still want to be taken seriously as an artist, and it felt glib and you know, too silly. But and then we had Guy Nadon, the very famous Quebecois jazz drummer, come and drum on it, and it kind of put it in a place where it's like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. So I was okay with it at that point. But Pierre fought me a little bit on that.
When did you write it? When did you write it? Did you like? When do you write such a fun, happy, sweet, lovely song?
I don't remember.
Because all the other songs, it's like, oh, well, you know, I came out of this moment and then this happened and then came out of this moment and that happened, you know?
You know, these things disappear sometimes, and it was really quick and easy. And I mean, I have a song like that on my new record that, well, I'm not even sure if it's going to end up on the new record because it's so happy. And everything
they're gonna have to find a good jazz drummer to come on and talk you into putting it back on.
Maybe, you know, yeah, because it's such an outlier to all the other songs, which are, you know, they're beautiful and dark and rich and some heavy sentiments and which is funny. And I've been, you know, we've all been laughing in the studio nonstop saying, you know, we're writing the saddest record and laughing our asses off the entire time. It's like, what is this? What is happening?
Yeah, but this is my third time getting the chance to talk to you. And I know you've sort of made fun about this about yourself before on TV and stuff like that. But that's the vibe, is that you write these beautiful, sad, destroying songs. And you're very pleasant.
I'm really happy. I think it's because I get all that shit out. Like I work it out. And you know, it's there, it's in me. I have lots of, you know, childhood trauma and lots of stuff that, you know, the well is deep, but I've worked through a ton of it and my life is glorious. I'm so lucky. So I really don't have a lot to complain about, which is, you know, I think probably why it took me 10 years to write this next record.
Fair enough. Yeah, you took you 10 years to get as sad as you got in 1 year back in the old days. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, you know, but now again, it's looking outward, it's looking at the world and all the crazy stuff that's going on, and you know, try not to be too on the nose about it, but just like, okay, where's my place in all this? And I've never been particularly political, and I still am not. I'm just trying to sort of think about it in terms of, you know, personal experience and more relationship stuff. But yeah, this one song is very I guess it's actually got that ice cream kind of chorus, which is like it's a long way down. So it's like, it's all light and happy, but it's like, but don't get too sure of it because that hook can come at any moment and pull it away. But it's kind of like this, let's try and be optimistic in this sea of darkness. And then there's some surf analogies as well, because surfing is one of the best things in the world. And I kind of wanted to write a song about surfing. So, but it is very much, as I said, an outlier, and all the stuff, the rest of it, which is very dark.
I've always wanted to try it. Hey, surfing. I've never done it.
Oh, it's magic. You got to try it.
It's because I'm from the Atlantic Ocean, and that's not a great surfing ocean, the Atlantic Ocean.
Oh, go to Nova Scotia. There's Point Break after Point Break.
Yeah?
Yep.
How long does it take you to stand up?
It depends on how good your balance is, and there's a number of.
Can you do
variables.
it by the years for me? I don't know how How long did it take you to stand up?
How long did it take me? I stood up on my second wave. But I have good balance. I did yoga for years and years, and I had a good teacher, and it was a really nice, easy left. So you just, and I'm still terrible. 35 years in, I'm still not a good surfer. I'm a moderately okay surfer. I shuffle. I still haven't learned to walk on the board. I don't do it enough to get consistently good. But I love it. I write so many lyrics sitting on the waves, just, bobbing up and down, and it's very melodic and rhythmic.
I got a hard question before we go.
Okay.
So Fumbling Towards Ecstasy changed things for you. You broke into the US market and made you a big star internationally. If you look at the charts of what was going on else at the time, there wasn't really anything like it. A lot of hard rock, a lot of grunge, a lot of hip hop. Mm-hmm. There were singer-songwriters. Their chords weren't like yours. Their chord progressions, their textures, their lyrics weren't like yours. What do you think it was about that record that resonated with people in '94?
I honestly think you'd have to ask other people that. I mean, I don't know.
With 30 years, I thought 30 years you might have a little bit of,
I don't. I think it's a really strong record, start to finish. And this was the time when people listened to albums. And I just think that it was the right place at the right time, and the right kind of music, the right kind of emotional sentiment. Maybe it was a bit of a shift from all the rock. It was maybe a little more complex and more emotionally driven. And most of my peers and people around the same age were either, in university or finishing high school or finishing university, and all these big shifts and changes were happening in their lives and becoming independent for the first time. And I think I'm reiterating what a lot of people have told me, that this album is the soundtrack, and it got them through university, got them through their first heartbreak. So I think it was sort of the perfect storm of a lot of the sentiments and feelings and things that I was writing about happened to be parallel to a lot of other people's experiences.
Last question is something I should have asked earlier. When you told me that the imposter syndrome went away, when you told me that this
completely,
not completely. But when it abated a little bit, a fair bit, and we can say, mm-hmm. that you started to accept, hey, maybe I deserve some of this stuff. Maybe. What changed that happened?
I have no idea. Maybe it's age. Maybe it's taking maybe being given an honor like this, where it actually allows you to look back and, as I said, look at the body of work, look at how long I've been doing it, and the fact that how lucky am I still get to do it after being in this industry 36 years. And I can still play to 15,000 people. That's massive. And so it's kind of like all these stepping stones to validation, right? Like, oh yeah, well, I'm still doing this, and people, amazingly enough, still want to hear my music and are still excited by it. So I guess it's like an accumulation of acceptance of, I guess this is good. And I mean, again, I know it's good, but being away from it for so long, like between COVID and just kind of doing really small shows by myself, I was afraid that people had kind of moved on. So that was a trepidation about starting this big tour too. It's like, God, I really hope we're not going to just suck and people aren't going to come and I'm going to be playing to like, quarter full venues. I just didn't know. So I guess, the validation came in, most of the shows were sold out. People were loving it. And remembering that feeling of like, okay, yeah, this does feel really, really good. And it filled me up. And I'm very lucky. I get filled up by a lot of things. I don't need this to feel good about myself. But I think I did need it to remind myself that what I do still has value. And that's a really good feeling because, I am making a new record and I know that people aren't going to care about that new music in the same way that they care about the old stuff, but they might in 10 years because it might find a place in their hearts and the way it has in mine. And that's kind of how I've always lived my life and my career. What fills me up and makes me feel like I've done the absolute best I can, I then release that, give it out to the world, and other people seem to really like that. So whether it's an authenticity or I'm just, I'm maybe they're relating to the selfishness. I don't know, because it is very selfish for me. I write for myself. I always have. And again, that's a luxury, but I'm grateful for it. And I think just this is who I am. This is the kind of songs I'm writing. This is how I feel. And this is how I want to connect with you. And I think just playing live is so magical for all of that, for that just validation of, again, I get to feel like I'm part of something bigger than myself. And I think we all crave that. We're pack animals. We want to be part of a tribe, part of a community. And I think even just for those few hours, you feel like you're part of this big thing, this thing that's bigger than yourself. And that's magical.
Yeah, I mean, there's that documentary coming out about Lilith. I mean, that's a whole other community in itself, and I'm excited to see that.
I am too. I am too. I haven't seen a rough cut yet, so it's happening.
You haven't seen it yet? You haven't seen a rough cut or anything yet?
No, they're editing right now.
Are you nervous?
No. Yeah. I might be when I see the rough cut.
I don't know what it says about me that my go-to was, "Are you nervous?" Sarah, but before we go too long, I just want to tell you it's a great and well-deserved honor, the Songwriters Hall of Fame.
Thank you. I feel that too. I'm really both my daughters are coming with me, and they were super excited to come. So that to me is a huge they want to help celebrate their mom.
Well, now they know that they saw the 15,000 people out there. They know how cool their mom is.
Yeah, it definitely raised the bar a little bit. It's like, okay, you're a little bit cool.
I think you're a little bit cool too, Sarah. Thank you for doing this.
My pleasure. Nice to talk to you.